everybody. Artish and Finesse with you on Monday night, episode 5 of The Bachelorette in the Books. Finesse, we saw a lot of things tonight that are very familiar and comforting in a way. But one thing that we've never seen, as far as I can recall, is someone challenging a man's fatherhood head on, like we saw tonight.
Right. It was in his face. It was unapologetic. He didn't hold anything back. It was really like, hey, I think you're a bad father. Why didn't you go to Easter services? Why didn't you call your kid on Easter? And hey, by the way, why are you here in Germany if you love your kid so much? I don't know how to react to this. I can't really put this in its proper context. I leave it to you.
Well, I'll tell you something. It may not have come back the bite, Michael, tonight, but you don't challenge a man's fatherhood. No matter what you think of his fatherhood, you don't challenge it in that way and not pay the price for that. I think we're going to see Michael get his comeuppance as soon as next week.
Yeah, if there's one thing I'm sure of, it's that his comeuppance are coming. It did hurt him tonight. It might not have hurt him tonight. He's going to have the satisfaction of getting through this episode, but his clock is ticking. He's the obvious candidate to go home next week. I don't think he's there for the right reasons. I don't think that Dez thinks he's there for the right reasons. And that wasn't that the theme of this episode? We've reached a point, it's episode 5. This is the grind, right? This is when it's like the middle of the season. You're playing 3 games in 4 nights on a road trip. You're in Munich one night. You're in Switzerland the next. You can see Austria in the distance. You got all these things. And really, it's about survival. And these guys, rather than focus on their own love, it's all about, hey, so-and-so's not here for the right reasons. So-and-so's not here for the right reasons. And I'm telling you, they're going to wear themselves out doing this. You got to pace yourself. Look at a Juan Pablo. Look at a Chris. Look at these guys. They're going to be the freshest guys come hometowns.
They're playing the fewest minutes right now. They're saving themselves. No, but you're right. I feel like I know you missed the early part of the episode, but we've seen it before. What we're talking about, there are a lot of different metaphors I think that apply, but one that comes to mind with Bryden at the beginning. You know, Chris and Dez had the first one-on-one date, and they're skipping gaily through Munich together. And Bryden, the military man, the Iraqi war veteran, decides he's not going to wait until the end of their date. He needs to interrupt their date to let Dez know that it's time for him to go home. And I don't know what came over Bryden, but you know, the best laid plans, Finesse, when you have boots on the ground, like Bryden did at that point.
Right.
You know, forget your game plan. You know.
Well, let's extend the war metaphor here.
He's just reacting out there. You know?
Well, let's explore the war metaphor there, because I got another one for you. Now, you alluded to the fact that I missed the first half hour of this episode. I come in at the 30-minute mark. I'm paratrooping into Germany like I'm in the 101st Airborne. But unlike Bryden, I land on the ground. I know where I am. I found my bearings. I studied the maps. You know, I've been here before. I know what tree is which direction. I know which way the North Star is pointing. I can get back to my camp. Bryden's out there. I mean, he's supposed to be the guy that can navigate these tough situations.
He's walking through Munich and asking people if they've seen the TV cameras. I mean, what do you do? Munich's a big city, Bryden. What kind of a soldier are you? Do some reconnaissance.
Right. Like, play it a little bit closer to the vest. Or at least give a man his time. Like, Chris was doing a nice job. And I think he's emerged as maybe not the favorite, but certainly a contender, maybe a dark horse contender. He could get to the top 2. I could see him being the Lindsay with a Z. Kind of that sort of run that's a little bit magical, but at the end, you don't have enough, like a George Mason type of situation.
To push you over the top. He's very non-threatening, Chris.
Right. I think she feels safe with him, not because he's protecting her from other people, but because he's not a threat to her on his own.
Right, and that's important, but is it enough?
Well, it's unclear to me that anybody's doing enough right now. Because I've said it over and over again, I've just not been impressed with the group date situations. I think that none of these guys are trying to stand out for good reasons. No one's making aggressive moves. You know, you got a lot of like passive aggressive. Brooks is looking in on somebody else. Juan Pablo, I mean, he's just, I know I said pace yourself, but dude, you could act like you're awake, you know?
Yeah, I think the problem is that, Juan Pablo's checked out. At this point, he's saying you just have to love my 7 children. People are like, Juan Pablo, I thought you only had one child. Before that, we didn't realize you had any. Juan Pablo is just, he's the most interesting man alive. He's just drifting in and out of the scenario there, but it's not enough to engage her.
I think every time Juan Pablo goes to the mailbox, he might find out he has another kid.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the most confident guys, Juan Pablo aside, the most confident guys are also the sleaziest guys. So what you're left with is a very clear dichotomy this season. You've got the confident sleazy guys who are progressing because of their confidence. And you've got the nice guys who may not have that oomph, that extra something that they need to push them over the top.
Well, it's a question to me how nice Chris is. He keeps referring to Des as a girl. Do you find that condescending? Do you find it chauvinistic, sexist? How offended are you by that?
When you combine it with really bad poetry, it's a disaster. I'm not sure how chauvinist it is, but I do think it's not probably what she would appreciate being called. And you combine that with the bad poetry, I think he's going to wear out his welcome pretty quickly. Now, he's no Mikey. Mikey, who, in his special moment on the group date suggested that they make mini snowmen together. Des is not 5 years old. I'd rather be called a girl than treated like a girl who wants to make mini snowmen.
Right. And then, of course, she predictably reacts with this girlish, oh my God, that sounds so much fun, because, you have to be carefree on a show like this. You have to let the other person bring out the kid in you. If she was like, that's ridiculous, I'm 26.
That sounds like a horrible idea.
Yeah, it's freezing cold. Can't we go back inside and have a glass of wine or something? That's
not an option.
That's not right. You can't do that. That's like not going rappelling because you're afraid of heights. It's just not something that's done on a show like this. So he was an obvious candidate to go. Not necessarily this week, but if it wasn't this week, it was next week. And I really think that had she not been forced to give a rose to the attorney, Michael, that it would have been Michael gone this week, Mikey gone next week.
Maybe so. I mean, Michael is a federal prosecutor. Don't we want our federal prosecutors to have some judgment? Why would Michael think that what Des wanted on that date was for him just to abuse Ben while they're sitting in the floating hot tub, cruising around the lake? What would give him that impression?
Look, The Bachelor, every episode is its own playoff series. And we just saw this with the Penguins. They lost their focus for 2 games, and that was it. Are we
in the third round now? Are we in the conference finals?
The fifth week is sort of like your game 5 through 7 of the second round. It's like shit's starting to get pretty real at this point. And I think that Michael just lost his focus for a long enough period of time. And even though technically he's still alive, his fate has been sealed. And he's not really playing for anything at this point. He's just going through the motions. It's like you're down 8-0 in a game and you got to play out the last 2 minutes because you play to the whistle.
Let me ask you this question. Would you like to see more, to extend the metaphor here, it's like in the locker room between periods kind of stuff with the guys sitting around the room talking about how Des must be feeling, hypothesizing, theorizing, rubbing each other down a little bit, joking, slapping each other's faces. Would you like to see more of that or less of that?
Well, I'd like to see more of it with one caveat, that they don't add an hour to the show to put that in. If they can keep the show at 2 hours, I would like to see more of that. Because if they're going to make the show about, wrong reasons this, promote my business that, want to be the next Bachelor this, going to get so many girls when I get home that, then you got to show us that. Because if you're just having these guys complain about it, it's lost on me. Like, I don't know that James is a bad guy. Is James a bad guy? How would I know? He went and saw Millie and Al or whoever those two old people were last week and took them to the casino in Atlantic City. I mean, strikes me as a fine gentleman. I don't know what these other guys are talking about, that he's there with some business he's promoting or whatever. It's like, you got to show it if you want us to believe it. And I don't believe that he's that bad of a guy.
Yeah, I'd like to see a little bit more of it too. I'd like to see a little bit of what goes on when you put those guys in a room and really all they're talking about for hours at a time is, what must be happening on the date. I'd rather see that than the date.
Do you? What did you think about Germany? How do you think Germany came across on this episode?
Pretty heavily Nazi, I thought.
Did you catch when Des called Germany the happiest place on earth?
Yeah, I thought I stopped paying attention about halfway through, quite frankly, but it struck me as a little bit dry, and empty.
I would love to see a new tourism brochure for Munich or Berlin, and it just says Germany, the happiest place on earth, and it's just grumpy German people walking down the street, or maybe the yodeler.
I just hope we see a little bit more Juan Pablo next week, a little bit less of James and
this is where Juan Pablo should really be entering his comfort zone now, going international. Doesn't he have an advantage? This is sort of everyone's technically on a neutral field, but he's got much more experience in the international dating game than the rest of these guys. Don't you think that should be an advantage?
Yeah, absolutely. Aren't we in Spain next week?
I told you, I don't watch. I don't know what's going on next week.
I think we may be in for a Juan Pablo coming out party.
With the language advantage, and it could be a huge week for Juan Pablo. I mean, I think he's a big candidate to make a move next week. I still think Drew had potential, but he's not there for the right reasons anymore. He's now on right reasons patrol. And
yeah, you can't be on right reasons patrol. You have to just let things go. That's absolutely right.
Zach with a K and no C, do you take him seriously, or does the fact he doesn't have a C in his name really turn you off from him?
It's very difficult to take Zach with a K seriously for many reasons, but, Des seems to think that he's the best kisser. That was what was revealed tonight. And, you can't discount that, that magnetism.
Right, but she also said that from an emotional perspective, she'd like to kiss Brooks. And I thought that's what makes Brooks the clear front runner. Well, maybe not clear, but I would say he's in pole position right now.
I've been telling you not to sleep on Brooks. You know that.
Well, you're really seasoned at this, and you have an eye for kissing that not a lot of men do.
Yeah, I know what to look for.
You look for hair and you look for kissing. We knew Brooks had the hair. Now that we know he has the kissing, you wonder what could stop Brooks at this point.
It's a tough combination to beat. I'll tell you that right now.
We go, I just want to mention one thing. We saw tonight, which was pretty much just a chapter in our downloadable iBook, which is the canceled cocktail party, and the shock that it brings everybody when the bachelor or bachelorette announces that he or she has made his or her decision and needs no extra time. And if anybody out there is questioning our expertise, you would have seen this episode coming a mile away if you download the book.
Yeah, it's obvious. And, it always comes precisely at the moment in the season when somebody needs to say something about somebody being there for the wrong reasons, and they don't have the opportunity.
Time is precious, and if you're not given time, it's going to get really precarious out there. And I think a lot of guys tonight felt that. They felt that pressure.
Yeah, if you want that rose, get that time. All right, thanks for joining us, everybody. Until next time, the big game.
It's time to keep it. It's time to keep it. It's the big keep it. Tom and Kibbits with the big keep it. Ooh, big Kibbits. Big. It's the big Kibbits. Tom and Kibbits with the big Kibbits. Ooh.